Time is the most precious and immaterial of all life's things. Not my time, though. That stuff's worthless.
Recently, a friend of mine dragged me into a game that has proven as much an incredible experience as a complete and total curse. I have spent entirely too many hours, too late at night, over the last month on this game, and it has near single-handedly been responsible for why I haven't gotten any new YouTube content lately. So, with that as a precursor for what an incredible game this is and why I need to gush about it, let us begin. In Blueprints, you take the role of a teenage boy named Simon, who has inherited his late uncle's estate, under the condition that Simon succeeds in his uncle's last wish. You see, your uncle did not believe in giving simple gifts, but rather has full confidence that their nephew can earn their inheritance, so long as they're able to locate the 46th room of their estate, something that would be rather hard on its own, seeing as the estate only has 45 rooms in the first place, but as an overachieving rich eccentric, your uncle had no plans to stop there. This challenge is meant to prove unequivocally, both to your uncle and Simon himself, that he is a worthy heir of their estate. As such, to locate the 46th room, Simon has been given the following restrictions until their inheritance is complete. Restriction 1. You must never spend the night indoors, sleeping in a tent on the grounds. Number 2. No items from outside the estate may be used in your search, except for maybe your personal pen and journal, and all items must be left inside overnight. 3. No outside help may be given. And 4. The estate's very nature means your progress can never be retained each day. Now, while the game's plot and mystery could have been left there with the rather cliché inheritance story, and done just fine as a perfect example of why a cliché done well is not cliché at all, Blueprints goes above and beyond in both the plot and the world building. After finishing what one could call the game's core, that the community lovingly calls the tutorial, rolling credits, and then having finished a story worth your time and money both, the game asks you quite gently to keep exploring with its subtle design choices and wonderful depth of ever-circling secrets to create a perpetual and constant sense of intrigue, creating in the player a drive to explore all that Simon's new home has to offer. Overall, I give this game a Diamond Star for mechanics and fun, a Diamond Star for story and atmosphere, a Platinum Star for time and cost, and a Gold Star for musicality. And overall, a certification of being bourgeois propaganda of the highest order. Now, I do intend to keep spoilers quite low, even in the spoiler section for this game, as if you haven't played it yet, I strongly recommend doing so. I won't be giving away any puzzle solutions, only talking about the incredibly clever mixture of semi-alien world building and just how they put the light into this roguelite to fantastic effect. Now, there have been roguelite puzzle games before, such as procedurally generated noir puzzles and other games that simply contain puzzles as side mechanics, but I think Blueprints deserves extra note for how hard and successfully it dedicated itself to the idea, a success that comes from the brilliance of the author's monk-like dedication to their craft. For those who don't know, the author of Blueprints made a frankly horrifying decision to just stop playing video games during the game's development. I still struggle to fathom why one would choose to do so, but I certainly can't argue with the results, as the author claimed it was to prevent their game's vision from being affected by the industry at large. And what a vision it is! While I originally just wanted to gush about the mechanical designs that the game's creator came up with, I also want to talk about the way in which the author combined mechanics and narrative to give the player both unique and sensical axes to discover new information for the puzzles, all to forge a world that feels fleshed out, familiarly human, and completely alien in origin. So first, let's go over progression systems. In most roguelites, progression is given in any 3 forms. The first is raw power. The numbers the player uses to do battle are increased in their favor, such as more attack or starting health. Second is acquiring more options, for example, unlocking new weapons or ships to begin a run with, new characters, or adding new items to the pool of items that the shop has on hand. And finally, skill. As players become more knowledgeable and experienced with the core gameplay loop, this skill can allow them to overcome obstacles that many other players would simply need more power to defeat, or to find elements that others might not even know are there. Blueprints uses all 3 of these, blending them into the game's puzzle loop with tremendous effect and with innovation. You see, without a combat loop as a puzzle game, the creator was required to use the unique puzzle mechanics that they had added to this world in order to allow for player progression. Well, all three of these forms of progression appear in the traditional format, such as starting each day with more gold, unlocking new rooms to be found in the house, and learning that walking back and forth through a door 8 times to inspect a frame for any signs of details is a really, really bad idea in this game. The interesting way in which progression arises in this game comes from the different methods it provides of RNG manipulation. You see, even on the first day, the player is entirely equipped to complete the game. So much so, there's even an achievement for it. However, the shifting halls of your estate means that Lady Luck gets the final say in whether or not this task is successful. Day over day, the player acquires 2 critical thresholds to make this luck much more tolerable in the way that the most basic and weak rooms in the house are empowered by raw upgrades, knowledge, or both combined. My favorite of the game's direct power upgrade mechanics comes in the form of upgrade discs, a floppy disk drive that picks a random room from the game's set of weaker, in other words, relatively empty, common rooms, and allows the player to pick one of 3 upgrades. These upgrades generally come in a mixture of increasing the resources found within, providing synergy with other locations, or changing which resources provided. If the house regularly provides too few keys, then adding an extra key to the nook or storage closet allows you to choose which direction of resources luck tends to send your way. On the other hand, while raw power is all well and good, there is no room in the house that empowers the incredible nature of our third roguelite progression system, that of knowledge, quite like the Breaker Room. The Breaker Room is a dead-end closet. It contains nothing but a singular circuit breaker panel with no resources, no upgrade discs to attribute to it, and, more critically, no doors, which makes it a very expensive and rather useless room to new players. Upon first encountering the Breaker box, I felt somewhat overwhelmed by how little knowledge I had. There are buttons I could press that revealed an obvious puzzle, as well as 3 switches to rooms that I had no idea how to locate, or if the power being on or off was good, not to mention the warning note and scrawled off switch at the bottom. This all led to the Breaker Room being something I actively avoided for a long while. But when the time rolled around to replay the game for challenge runs, the Breaker instantly became the most valuable and vital of all rooms. With knowledge, this room becomes the crux of a good run, providing the player with direct synergistic upgrades to 4 separate rooms, 2 of the strongest permanent power upgrades the game has to offer, and removing a dreaded dead end from your drafting pool to ensure easier progress towards your goals. After all, a room with no doors has no opportunity beyond what's already inside. Meanwhile, there are some rooms like the boudoir. There are some rooms like whatever this is, which begins the game quite literally empty, have upgrades that can be acquired through synergies, discs, and simple knowledge of what secrets lie within. By the end of the game, all of these weak beginner rooms have become rooms full of opportunity, designed by the player's own hand to manipulate the whimsy of the estate to create a navigable path they can call home. But enough about mechanics, because, well, the mechanics go even further in how they are integrated into the story, a story in which all the nonsensical aspects we just talked about are not only mechanical flavor text, but direct aspects of the world's plot and structure. You see, the world of Blueprints does not take place on Earth. In fact, as far as I know, it doesn't take place in our timeline, solar system, or same form of reality. This took me quite by surprise, not in the sense of it being simply a fictional world, the way this world feels like a world inhabited by an alien culture of human beings. To start with, let's look at the most on-display aspect of this alien and fictitious world: the technology. Remember that 4th rule set by your uncle? Well, let's take a nice look at that last one, because that alone defines both the game's real gameplay twist and the reason a roguelite puzzle game works in the first place. The estate only contains 2 rooms to start with, the entry hall and a distant antechamber, separated by a massive void of yet undrafted plans. The doors of the entry hall never move, and neither do any others, but the locations they lead to, those are in perpetual flux. Each day, upon pulling each door's handle, rather than opening to the usual room, the player is given 3 random options to choose from a pool. Whichever option the player selects is where this door now leads for the remainder of that day. In the player's goal to progress deeper into their estate, this leads to each door being an opportunity and a risk, as, without careful planning, the player may find themselves with no door to lead further towards their destination, or they may even find themselves locked out from progressing further by security doors and locks. Now, while this is a wonderfully clever design for gameplay, the creator made a blatant and intentional decision. This whimsical game mechanic is simply how the world works. There is no lampshading of this oddness, nor is it ignored by the plot. Houses in this world, perhaps just rich ones, but enough for there to be an entire magazine article and contests around the art of drafting. Employee notes find both whimsy and frustration in the shifting halls, just like the player. And all this strangeness ends up being truly accepted as part of the culture. From there, however, the alien nature of this world is expanded into even more fundamental aspects of life. The player may find papers with sequences of colored numbers, odd symbols, circular patterns, and blueprints that are not blue. As the game progresses and the player becomes more familiar with the fact something so fundamental as mathematical notation differs from what we know here on Earth, each one of these things takes on a new and ever-growing meaning, providing a backdrop of a bloody and violent political history. History that weaves perfectly into many of the game's own mechanics, such as why exactly the boudoir contains a hidden gemstone, the shrines of goddesses whose stained glass and marbled statues litter the estate, and finally to the game's own core moral lesson and foundation. The moral lesson that I've taken away from this game is one that I speculate to be what the game's creator truly wanted to communicate to the player. They have built this world to let players partake in the joy of discovery and wonder at the world that they live in, and something starkly contrasted by the historical lessons of the fictional world the author has created. But these lessons in a fictional history do mirror reality, and nowhere does this mirror shine more starkly than a book written by Simon's own mother, found in the very nursery she raised her son in. A children's book titled The Red Prince. This book is presented as a simple children's tale, one that the player isn't meant to read much into about a child who loves the color red. They walk amidst red banners, red knights, wear red clothes, and live in red houses. Most of all, they fear all other colors, taking deep comfort in escaping those opposing colors via the pages of this very same red book that we are reading now. However, we discover through the lessons of that violent history that color in this world is the grandest of political symbols and national pride. We discover that the book has been censored from its origins for being too political, and that the story of the Red Prince is of a child who finds comfort in their people's own propaganda. This nationalism is always presented by the game as a source of terrible events in Simon's life. Even outside the red propaganda, Simon's own mother left his life because of her own nationalist beliefs, refusing to let go of their people's past. Meanwhile, Simon's uncle and other adults were estranged by the boy's indoctrination into the Red Nation, and the history of his family's political importance has set the child upon a dangerous stage in an uncertain future, as they are inheriting more than a simple property, but a legacy. But this starkly real depiction of how children are misguided and harmed by the nationalism and feuds of their parents is then contrasted with the game's strongest message when we are given the uncensored children's book, the lesson Simon's own mother wished for him to learn. That lesson is the real story of the Red Prince, a story of a boy so sure in their faith in the propaganda of nationalism, finally discovering a life worth living. Not in the love of their ancestral color black, but the color of a free sky and a peaceful world. A world worth exploring and a world worth living in. A world in which they may truly be themselves without the shackle of nations, the pride of the dead, and old men's propaganda. The only color that ever brought joy, wonder, and freedom to the boy. Not imperial red, not ancestral black. Instead, they have found value in life in the prince's new favorite color.
And if you look closely, you might see it too. The skies parted and the clouds withdrew. The prince had a new favorite color. The color blue.
Thanks for watching. I hope that this video has inspired other people, just like this game has inspired me to question the fundamentals of the worlds that they create and the puzzles and mechanics that they're putting inside of them. I'm overall not very happy with how this video turned out, but I do hope that somebody found this worth their time, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the next AOL. Goodbye.